Hello, everyone, and welcome to Mupo and Friends. We are,
Emanuela Messina,
and I'm Michelle Mupo.
and we're brought to you by Mupo TV.
And you can catch all of our shows at www.mupotv.com. That's www.mupotv.com. So stay tuned because Sundays at 2 p.m. Eastern, we have a very special guest all the time because we actually interview celebrities. That's what we do here. And I have to say, we've had some pretty cool guests who have shared a few things that they've never shared before, but they have on Mupo and Friends. And I want to thank you, Em, for filling in for Jess.
You are so welcome, and you are so right. There are things that the celebrities do share with us only on Mupo TV. And we want to thank you for tuning in today in our show where we bring the most awesome celebrities and the entrepreneurs you want to know about. Now, question for you, Michelle, is did you have a Mupo awesome week?
I did have a Mupo awesome week. What about you?
I had a great, awesome Mupo week. It's just been filled with so much excitement. So I'm so happy to be here.
Well, we welcome you.
Thank
And
you.
we are going to take a quick commercial break and we'll be right back with our special guest.
Hello and welcome back to Mupo and Friends. Our special guest today is a writer, producer, and director. He's written for Law and Order, SVU, created his own series, The Sequestered and To Live and Dialogue in LA, as well as a podcast series of James Patterson's The Coldest Case. Once again, he has put a pen and thought to the paper for the scripted audio drama 10 Days, starring Glenn Powell. Please welcome Aaron Tracy. Hello, Aaron. How are you?
Hey, Aaron,
Hi, I'm
thank you
good.
for
How are you guys doing?
well,
Excellent.
I'm excited because basketball is my favorite sport.
Oh,
So
all right.
why did you choose the NBA as a focus when you wrote 10 Days?
I'm a giant basketball fan too, and my partner on this project is Steve Nash, who's one of the all-time greats. He played for the Lakers in his final
Yeah.
couple years after the Suns, and so he was living in LA, and he was kind of trying to figure out what happens, with the rest of his life, like the second half of his life after his career is over, 18 seasons in the NBA. And one of the things he was thinking about, this is well before he was the head coach of the Nets, was Hollywood. And so I went in and had a meeting at a production company, and we were in there talking about a limited series about a president, just like this political kind of thriller. And we just took a break from that and just started talking basketball, as happens. And he said, you're a basketball fan. That's so cool. Sitting in the seat that you're in right now, yesterday was Steve Nash pitching us an idea. And I said, well, I happen to have a basketball idea that I'm obsessed with. So you should introduce me to Steve. And he did. And it kind of went great. Steve got it right away. This idea of the 10-day contract in the NBA, which we can talk about, a very, very strange contract that's like tailor made for really good drama.
That's amazing. Wow. So what prompted you to write the lead part for Glenn Powell?
So basically, the 10-day contract is about whenever any team in the NBA, the Lakers, the Knicks, whoever, when they are down a player because of an injury or for any reason, COVID has been a huge reason. So 10-day contracts have really popped up this year. But when a team is down a player, they can go pick whoever they want to come on for 10 days. Literally, they could pick you or me. They most often pick from the NBA's G League, which is like the minor league. And that player can be playing on the Oshkosh herd on a Monday and literally playing in Madison Square Garden on Tuesday. And for the next 240 hours, that player is trying to prove themselves as a member of the Knicks or whatever team got him. So it's this great sort of underdog story, and it's all based in reality. It's all true. And so I wanted an actor who was really, someone obviously like any great sports movie, any great underdog sports movie, someone who's you want to root for, someone who's got that sort of inherent charm about him, Thinking about my favorite underdog sports movies like Bull Durham or Rudy, any Kevin Costner movie from the 80s, certainly. And Glenn has that quality about him. You can't help liking him. You can't help being charmed by him. You can't help rooting for him. He's already a star, obviously. I think he's going to be a household name after Top Gun 2, which he's starring in, which comes out in a couple months. But he was just fantastic. He got the part right away. My first meeting with him, he said, after reading the scripts, he said he's not, the world's biggest basketball fan, but he totally understood the character because it reminded him of coming up in Hollywood, where you just have 10 days or a very limited window to prove yourself. And he gave this really emotional, terrific performance that's at the core of the series.
That's pretty wild because I can relate to the 10-day contract.
Yeah.
Well. So you directed 10 days in your kitchen, on your kitchen table, or from your kitchen table. How weird was that? Like, did that? Obviously, it was amazing, but
it was totally amazing and surreal. I mean, I live in New York. I live in Brooklyn, but most of the industry is obviously in Los Angeles. So I've spent the past decade flying out to LA every 6 weeks for a meeting or a pitch or production, whatever it is. In this case, because of the pandemic and everything being shut down, I literally walked 10 feet from my bedroom to the kitchen counter where I could direct the show. And I directed over Zoom. It was kind of a seamless process, despite all the obstacles. In the case of Glenn, he went to a studio, I think it was in West Hollywood near his place, and he would be alone in the recording booth there. And then I would be directing from Brooklyn. Our production team is Treefort Media, who just did a fantastic job. They would have 3 of their producers on the Zoom call. We would have our script supervisor on. There was an audio engineer on. There was another engineer with Glenn. Another of Treefort's producers was in person with Glenn outside of the booth. And we had an actor reading opposite him on Zoom. And you cannot tell that any of the actors are not reading opposite their actual scene partners, that they're reading opposite, actors that we hired. It all comes together seamlessly. And giving notes over the computer is kind of a weird thing. You don't get that like personal chemistry, that personal touch, but it's so efficient, and you're able to get great actors who can just either record from home or go into a studio. They don't put on makeup. They don't put on a costume. They can record their entire role in just a few days. So you can get great stars like Glenn or like the rest of our cast, which is, partly why I love audio dramas so much.
So what would you find, or what are the advantages and disadvantages did you find when working remotely? Do you have any little glitches that you just couldn't overcome, or you found creative ways to get over those little glitches?
Yeah. I mean, I was lucky. I was working with great production partners in Treefort. So they always would find a way to overcome the obstacles. The first show I made, audio drama I made in the pandemic, was the show I made with James Patterson, The Coldest Case. And that one, we were so early in the pandemic, we were all still trying to figure out how this would work. So we were Natalie Emmanuel, who starred in Game of Thrones and Fast and the Furious. I mean, so many great movies and shows. We were recording her, and she was in England, and I was in New York, and Broadway Video, the production company, was in New York. But people were spread out, other people on the Zoom. Our script supervisor was in Detroit. I mean, on Zoom, you can kind of be anywhere. Anyway, we sent Natalie a kit to record at her house. So a microphone, a recorder, everything she would need. And then we had to sort of test what room will have the best audio so we can, make it sound like she's wherever we need to put her. So we ended up having her go into her bathroom. She had to put blankets against the porcelain so there wouldn't be an echo on her voice. I remember we recorded Kristen Ritter, who also starred in the show. Same deal. We were going to send her all of the equipment and, spent a lot of time trying to figure out what the best audio setup would be. And then she mentioned that her partner at the time was the lead singer in War on Drugs. And so she had a professional studio in her basement, so she could just go downstairs and record it on like the most professional equipment around. So that ended up working out well. But for everybody, it's like, custom made for each actor. So that is challenging in itself. It's very different than just going to a studio and having all your actors together on set.
Right. And is it more difficult to promote audio drama than televised drama?
To promote it?
Well, yeah, pretty much. Like, so for instance, you could do a trailer, obviously, and get some visual, because
Yeah.
when they do all the animations and the
Yeah.
sound effects, it's just totally crazy. And it must be, I mean, tell me about it. Is it harder to get audio, or like,
Yeah, well,
pitch it and
for trailers, so both of the shows I mentioned, 10 Days and The Coldest Case, both have trailers. They were, I don't know how conventional it is. Maybe this is the norm in audio, but I basically wrote a trailer. I just created, for 10 days, I created the role of a narrator who would kind of tell the story about, an underdog player who's got 240 hours to change his life forever, all that kind of, trailer stuff that gets people excited for the show. And then we, with Treefort Media, we interspersed lines of dialogue from the show into that. And it actually worked out pretty well. The cast, the rest, Glenn Powell is truly extraordinary in it, but Lamorne Morris is also one of the stars. He's one of the stars of New Girl. He's the star of Woke. Jessica Hecht, who was on Friends and Succession and Breaking Bad and a great Broadway actress, is another star of the show. And Erin Westbrook, who's just a phenomenal young actress, who's one of the stars of Riverdale, is on the show too. So the whole cast is just so great. And yeah, putting them together in the trailer, figuring out who's going to be on the poster, all that kind of stuff was much easier because of the amazing cast.
a lot of talent there.
Yeah.
A lot of talent. So why did you decide to do your first podcast series after you've already written for several TV shows?
Podcasts, I'm a podcast junkie. I just love them. A lot of writers right now are using them to create IP to then go sell a TV show, just sort of like creating proof of concept so that when you walk into HBO, you're not just pitching an idea that you came up with in the shower, you're pitching like this 10-hour, 5-hour, whatever it is, audio drama that has already been made and produced and thought through. And so it's kind of like having a book. For me personally, I am doing that. I am going to be pitching my podcast as TV shows, but I am truly also very happy if they just go no further than the podcast. I love them as ends in themselves. What you can do with audio drama is really different than what you can do with TV. You can be much more intimate. I think there's just a big difference between sitting on your couch and watching, a two-dimensional screen 10 feet in front of you. You're kind of removed from it just by the very nature of watching TV. With an audio drama, it is just in your head, just for you, wherever you go. Going to the supermarket, doing the laundry, sitting on the couch, whatever it is, there's no barrier. You're just with these characters. And I really do think that breeds a kind of intimacy with the characters and with the story that you don't get in TV, which I absolutely love.
Awesome. Now, what screenwriting podcasts do you actually recommend for aspiring writers?
Oh, that's a really good question. Like chat shows I love those shows. So I'll probably get some of these names wrong, but the Q&A with Jeff Goldsmith is one of the all-time best. He interviews every big screenwriter when they have a new movie coming out. And what he does that's so great is he delves deep into craft. So it's really like, not just, how'd you get the movie made, but like, how'd you come up with the structure? What is your main character's intention? So for any, new screenwriter, I highly recommend that one. John August and Craig Mazin, of course, have one called Script Notes, where they really talk about the business of Hollywood. Just today, a buddy of mine who's a showrunner recommended, my friend Alex, he recommended Screaming into the Void, or Screaming into the Hollywood Void, which is interviews with big showrunners talking about their failures, which I think is so much more helpful than when writers come on to talk about their successes. So I'm excited to listen to that one. And then I host my own called To Live and Dialogue in LA, where I talk to great filmmakers, writers who I adore about craft, So I've had Richard Curtis, who wrote 40 Years in a Funeral, and Ron Howard, Michael Douglas, Nancy Myers, just a bunch of people I'm a big fan of. But I think those kinds of podcasts are just, they're so important. They're so helpful for young writers, both in learning the craft and also just hearing the real voices of people who are struggling in the same way that you are. It makes the whole thing feel like there's a community out there, which I love.
Awesome. And we're going to take a quick commercial break and we'll be right back with Aaron Tracy.
Wait, you want some more?
And welcome back with Aaron Tracy. So Aaron, question is, writing is somewhat a solitary profession. How do you keep motivated when there's those days where you just don't feel like writing?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm a bit of a lunatic. I schedule every hour of the day. I find that's a good way to just keep me focused. Oftentimes I'll, run over and sort of my schedule won't line up with what I have planned, but I really try. So I feel like a good day is 6 hours of work. I think it's just to do more than 6 hours of writing is just so hard. You can do it if you're on super deadline for the next day, but if you're just a normal Tuesday, 6 hours of work feels about right to me. And so for the rest of the day, I schedule, whatever it is, gym time or phone calls or listening to a podcast or going for a walk or something like that. And then in terms of motivating for each project, what I really try to do is not work on anything in isolation. If the only person I'm answering to is myself, I'm just never going to get it done. So with every single project I have, and if you're working in development like I am, you have to have sort of like 10 projects going at once because so many of them are just going to fall by the wayside. That's just the nature of the business. So every single one of my projects, I have producers attached. And so with them, at least I have people who I know are waiting for pages from me. They're giving me notes. They're, sometimes giving me deadlines. And it helps get the work done. And having each project in a different stage of development, which is just necessarily what's going to happen, is really helpful too. If I was actually like on script on 6 different projects at one time, that would be impossible. But it just kind of works out.
Other than 10 days, what is your favorite underdog story?
It's a good question. When I wrote 10 Days, I watched a bunch of underdog movies. The ones that I found most inspiring for the show, I would say 3 of them. One was 8 Mile, the Eminem movie, which is just, I think it's Curtis Hanson. I mean, it's just such a brilliant movie, such an interesting world. He gives such a good performance. And it's like a great sports movie with no sports. And then 2 baseball movies. I'm a much bigger basketball fan than baseball fan, but in my experience, they're much better baseball movies than basketball movies. So my 2 favorites are Bull Durham, the Kevin Costner, Susan Sarandon 80s underdog movie by Ron Shelton, and Major League, which is just like a fun early Charlie Sheen comedy that's a little bit silly at times, whereas Bull Durham is more of a sophisticated R-rated romantic comedy, but Major League is also just like a feel-good underdog sports movie.
So we watch the same movies.
Yeah. What about you? What's your favorite underdog movie?
I would have to say I like Major League. Yeah. I love that. I did.
It's great. It's so good.
Now,
So good.
What gave you the idea for Sequestered? Like,
were
you on a jury before?
I've never been on a jury. And, when you try to do research, I've been called to jury duty, but I've never gotten selected for a jury. And when you try to do research to talk to people who have been on juries, they're so hard to find. Now, this was back when I was doing research for that show, which aired on Crackle. But it was a while ago, but I remember like Googling for hours, talking to friends, asking friends. It's really hard to find someone who's been on an ongoing trial, especially one who's willing to talk to you. I did finally find a random person who was very helpful, a stranger online. But no, I've just always been really intrigued in the same way that I think 10 days, the 10-day contract is like a perfect microcosm of when life can go in one of two very different directions. If you succeed in your 10 days, you're going on to a life of professional sports and money and, everything that comes with that. And if you fail over your 10 days, you're going back to a life that's, much more impoverished. With Sequestered, the show is about a jury that is, all sequestered in a hotel, and it turns into a fun little action thriller. Similar to 10 Days, it just feels like the perfect setup for drama. With Sequestered, the jury has so much power, right? They literally have life and death power. They don't know each other, right? So it's 12 strangers. So immediately you have conflict because it's 12 strangers who wouldn't necessarily be friends in any other walk of life, right? So that creates drama. They're all tied together in one hotel. So you have a confined space, you have a confined amount of time. It just felt like a really perfect recipe for drama. And so it's a fun little thriller show.
You're on the faculty at Yale.
Yeah.
What is one of your classes like?
So I teach 1 day a week. I teach 2 classes on TV writing. So in the fall, I've been teaching the sort of, I don't want to call it the beginner class, but the sort of the basics of how to write for TV, the basics of TV drama. And then in the spring, it's an advanced class where we really go over elements of craft. So it's like 1 week examining dialogue, including monologues and staccato dialogue and the difference between high context and low context dialogue and all the things that I kind of love thinking about anyway. And so it's just a real joy to get to go up to New Haven from Brooklyn 1 day a week and be on Yale's campus, which is just so beautiful and so full of energy. And you can feel the passion of the students and just teach for a couple hours. I really love it.
I can feel your energy when you talk about it, how much enthusiasm you have for that class. So that's phenomenal.
Yeah, I taught yesterday. It was great. We had a great class on dialogue, which made me think of it. I bring a lot of great guests to come speak to them. We watch a lot of clips. We just really enjoy it.
That's so great. That's so great. We're going to take a commercial break, but we will be right back.
And we're back with the amazing Aaron Tracy. So Aaron, what is the best dramatic writing for a screenwriter to study?
That's a good question. I always recommend, rather than talk about a specific piece, I always recommend that new writers read scripts that they haven't seen. So in other words, fantastic to go read an old screenplay, but if you've seen the movie, it can silence you because all of a sudden you can picture perfectly everything on the page. You can picture how the dialogue should be read. You can picture the action lines, and it makes the screenplay take on kind of a faded quality. Like it makes the screenplay seem perfect. And you think, well, I can never write anything like that. When I write something, I can't see it that perfectly. So the most important thing is to read scripts of movies you have not seen. And I do really think that reading is the best way to become a better writer. We were talking about podcasts earlier with screenwriters. I can't tell you how many podcasts interview with screenwriters, how many screenwriters talk about their first jobs being readers at studios, which is the job where every script that comes in, It's your job to read it, evaluate it, write coverage on it, and either pass it up or throw it in the trash. So many great writers started out with that job. And I think the reason is because if you just read script after script after script, 3-act structure kind of just gets into your DNA. So does character arc. So does dialogue. Even when it's bad, you're thinking about how you would make it better. So I really recommend to my students and to all new writers to just set a goal. Read 1 script a week if you have time. Read 2 scripts a week if you really have time. 1 script a month if that's all you can manage. But reading is far and away the most important thing. And now you can get any script you want on the internet. Certainly you can go to Barnes & Noble or to any bookstore and get compiled TV scripts. The whole first season of The West Wing and the second season I really recommend. But no, you can get pretty much any script. So there's no excuse for not reading a ton.
But USA Today called Killer Instincts, the first show you worked on, the worst show for the season. How were you able to just brush that right off?
So I was just an assistant on that show. I was the writer's assistant. It was my first job in Hollywood. But yeah, it was a wake-up call. I had no idea how TV worked. And so being in the writer's room for, I think probably it was 5 or 6 months before we ever aired. So you're just working crazy hours, long hours. I watched the writers, but the assistants too, of course, just putting their social lives on hold and just giving everything to this show. And then we premiered, and yeah, as you say, USA Today gave us that really mean review. But watching all the writers just come in the next day and continue with their project, continue with the scripts, continue breaking story, I learned a lot from that. In the end, the writers aren't answering to the critics. They're answering to their network bosses, and the show was not canceled yet. It would be canceled soon after, but it was not canceled yet. So yeah, it's just a matter of, you realize this isn't just a hobby. This isn't just people who are inspired and want to write at night. This is a real job. It was a real learning experience for me to watch them still come in at 8 a.m. every day or whatever time it was and continue with the show.
Now you did some acting in 10 days as well. Are you gonna,
That's right. My professional acting debut. I was the creator and the head writer and executive producer and director. So I kind of made them hire me. I don't know if I actually deserve it. I gave myself a very easy part. I played the general manager of the 76ers, a guy named Saul Stevens. It was really fun. When I was a kid, I wanted to be an actor. I was in all the high school plays and that sort of thing. So it's if there's a job, and there is, harder in Hollywood than being a writer, it's being an actor. It's just they have no control over their own fates. They're getting rejected so many times every day. They're putting themselves out there. They're being really vulnerable. Oftentimes it is not, it's almost never their fault, right? They're being judged on their looks. They're being judged on really superficial things. It's just such an impossible job. So I have never been tempted to actually try it in a professional way, but my sneaky little way of having a professional acting job by playing this role that I wrote for myself was pretty great. And yeah, I had to go into the laundry room in my apartment where the acoustics were best and be huddled, right next to the washing machine as the script supervisor directed me. It was great. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, that's so cool. And your writing often concerns a lot of justice of one kind or another. Is that a particular interest that you have for yourself?
That's a good question. Yeah, most of the shows I've written on have had law in the title in some way, or Sequestered, about a jury, about Law and Order and Fairly Legal and a bunch of them. I think the path not taken for me was law school. I'm just really interested in the law. Those are my favorite movies. Growing up, my favorite movies were absolutely A Few Good Men or The Verdict or Witness for the Prosecution. I just think, like we've been talking about, they're inherently dramatic. I like the idealism inherent in, the system. I like the twists and turns that come with legal cases. I'm just a giant fan. And so that's what I gravitated toward writing.
I have an idea for you for
Great.
No, I'm serious. Do an entertainment law type of murder mafia type of thing.
That's interesting.
That
Specifically
is
on
interesting.
entertainment law.
Yeah, entertainment law.
Yeah. A
Hmm.
very good friend of mine, Logan, is an entertainment lawyer. Yeah, her stories are pretty great.
They are. And can you tell us about some of your up and coming projects?
Yeah, so I've a bunch of stuff in TV in development, but that's all still sort of waiting to go forward. In audio drama, a bunch of stuff too in development, but the stuff that I can talk about that's now been made. This another great partnership with James Patterson, who's got so many great book series that are ripe for adaptation. So he's got a young adult series called Daniel X, which I'm working on. We just made it with an amazing cast: Mercedes Rule and Abigail Breslin and Michael Cimino and just a bunch of really great people. So that's going to come out sometime in 2022, which I'm excited for. I had never written a superhero show before, and doing it in audio was amazing because, if you write a superhero show for TV or film, you have to be very cognizant of cost and how much is going to be green screen. And with audio, the sky's the limit. I mean, literally, whatever you could imagine, they can make a soundscape for, on the cheap. So that was incredibly fun. I think the soundscape is going to be pretty special. And then, I'm writing another legal drama for audio with Eva Longoria as my partner, which I'm excited about. A historical show with Shonda Rhimes in Shondaland. What else? A couple more James Patterson shows, which I'm excited about. And I'm currently in production on a political thriller called The Vetter, which which has been a passion project. It's like I'm a huge fan of those 70s paranoid thrillers like 3 Days of the Condor and Parallax and Marathon Man. And so this is my, lame attempt at it. But we've got a great cast. Lee Pace is the star, and Zasha Mamet is in it, Chaz Palminteri. So yeah, great cast. I have high hopes.
That's beautiful. Well, we're going to take a quick commercial break and we'll be right back with the conclusion of our interview with Aaron Tracy.
Welcome back. And before we wrap up things here, we have one last question for you. If you were to interview yourself, what question would you ask and what would the answer be?
I don't know. That's a good question. Why I'm in this insane business. I don't know. I mean, yesterday teaching, we talked about, I was up in New Haven teaching, and a lot of the students are, they're about to graduate. And so they're thinking about moving to Los Angeles or moving to New York and going into this business. And so there was a lot of talk of like, is this a good idea? Should I be doing this? It's something I really do think that if you can do something else, you probably should do that other thing, because this is a job. And I kind of feel like whatever else I did, if I had gone to law school, if I had done something else, I would have found my way back here, just because I love writing. I love thinking about story. I love the research aspect of it. But there's no stability in this job. And so it is a little bit of a crazy job to keep, even when you're a showrunner. I have a buddy who's a showrunner who just got fired off of his show. Even when you're at the top of your game or the top of the profession, there's no stability. Anything can happen. It's not a meritocracy. And so I guess the question would be, yeah, why keep going in this business that can be so unfair and unkind sometimes? And I think the answer is probably that there's still, a lot of reward in remembering that you get to wake up every day and you get to make things up for a living. And that is just like as good as it gets.
That was a great answer. I love it. That was perfect. And we want to thank you. And it was such a pleasure chatting with you today. Please look out for Erin Tracy's work, Sequestered, on Amazon Prime, To Live and Dialogue in LA on Apple Podcasts, and both The Coldest Case and 10 Days on Audible. You can follow, like, and subscribe to Erin at Erin D. Tracy on Twitter and under Erin Tracy on IMDb.
And as always, thank you for tuning into Mupo and Friends, courtesy of Mupo TV. And you can catch all our shows and others at www.mupotv.com. That's www.mupotv.com.
This is Emanuela Messina with our host, Michelle Mupo. And until next time,
have a Mupo awesome week.